right here in Michigan. It's because the United States imposes very low tariffs on passenger vehicle imports compared to Europe's 10% and India's 70%. I just met with General Motors CEO Mary Barra last month to ask her directly her thoughts on the trade issues, the tariff issues, and she cited example after example of countries that erect tariff and other trade barriers to entry into their markets that make it impossible for us to sell American-made vehicles in other countries. Meanwhile, we sell every foreign imported car you can think of here in the United States. This had the effect of hollowing out our manufacturing base, resulting in a lack of incentive to increase advanced domestic manufacturing capacity, undermine critical supply chains, and made us more dependent on foreign adversaries. I also look at this through the lens of national security. All of you know my background in the Army and the career that I had there. I think of it this way. If we had to defend ourselves in a conflict, can we honestly say we would be able to manufacture what it would take to defend ourselves? Sadly, right now, I think that we are vulnerable and would not be able to do that. We need to bring investment, jobs, and manufacturing back to the United States to make our country prosperous and strong again. Leveraging tariffs to negotiate better trade deals is a tool we can use to get there, but of course it can't be done recklessly. Just the past few days, we've seen the stock market take a turn for the worse. While it's important to keep in perspective that a handful of days is not indicative of a broader market, I understand it's where people save for retirement and for their future. We're not alone in that, which is why I'm keeping a close eye on this situation. We'll work with my colleagues in Congress to make sure we are doing everything we can to stabilize the market and ensure consumers don't experience long-term pain. I'm not ready to give up on the situation at this point, as we've just begun to see countries come to the negotiating table and see what type of deals we can put together. The good news is the stock market isn't the entire American economy. It's an indicator of how our economy is doing, but it's not reflective of the entire economy as a whole. In March, the U.S. added 228,000 jobs, nearly 100,000 more than the economists predicted. Additionally, Americans' wages are up, with hourly wages raising nearly 4% over the last year. So again, the stock market is one indicator, but other economic indicators are out there as well. We're also seeing mortgage rates begin to cool and other bond markets begin to slow as well. There's still a lot more work to be done, which is why I'm going to do everything I can to make sure these jobs are coming back to Michigan and our economy remains strong. I'll continue to advocate for vehicles rolling off the assembly line in the United States that are compliant with USMCA to be exempted from tariffs, and will monitor their implementation to ensure that they are utilized in a thoughtful and strategic manner that minimizes the short-term impact and maximizes long-term gain. So the bottom line here is that your opinion matters. Since taking office, I've traveled to every single county in Michigan's 7th Congressional District multiple times in a sincere effort to meet with constituents from all walks of life. I've done more than 100 visits in my district to locally owned businesses, to schools, hospitals, nonprofits, military units, veterans groups, local governments, and to the 2 VA hospitals that most of my constituents travel to. My team and I have also responded to more than 30,000 phone calls, letters, emails, all while meeting with dozens of people from mid-Michigan every single week. I appreciate you joining tonight's call, and I hope you know I will continue looking for meaningful ways to engage with everyone in the community, even those who disagree with me. For those of you just joining us, if you'd like to ask me a question, please press star 3. I look forward to answering your questions. We'll turn it back over to our moderator.
Thank you, Congressman. Our first caller this evening is Peter from Brighton. Peter, you're on with Congressman Barrett. What's your question? Peter, you're on with the Congressman.
Yeah, I was wondering why people from other countries can come and purchase land here, homes, everything, and yet we're not allowed to purchase property in Canada. You can lease it, but you can't own it, and if you die, it doesn't go to your family. It goes to the Canadian government, but yet the Canadians come to, they go to Florida, all the warm places during the winter, and buy it. They own it. And but you can't buy anything there. And then even worse is China buying up stuff here in this country, and you can't so much as take a dime to China. If you take it in there, it's theirs. And I don't know why. I think they should kick China out of this country.
Thank you, Peter, for your question. I appreciate that, and I share your concerns about individuals from foreign countries, especially adversarial nations that are purchasing farmland or investing into businesses in the United States and manipulating the outcome of opportunities for our citizens that are here. It's an alarming trend, and it compromises food supply, our other supply chain investment and growth in the United States. It's a real problem, and Congress actually has dealt with this in past sessions. I know that there is pending legislation that would prohibit the purchase of public or private real estate located in the United States. So in American properties it would prohibit their sale to people affiliated with the Chinese Communist Party. I support that in principle, and I'm interested to see, how we would apply that through legislation. The other thing I can tell you is actually my neighbor next door to me in my office, Pat Harrigan, is a new freshman member from North Carolina. He's a fellow Army veteran, and he uncovered a really alarming situation of retailers at our American military installations, at our American, post, the PX and the shopping centers there, the GNC supplement brand that sells a lot of vitamins and supplements on American military bases, was recently entirely acquired by a Chinese company. They are harvesting sensitive information about health and fitness and data and all of this tracking from our military members on military bases. And so Pat has a bill that would prohibit Chinese-owned companies from operating retail facilities on our military bases, and I think that is a common sense thing that we ought to be doing. I'm working with Pat on that bill to make sure that we can get that done. I remember, when GNC was an American-owned company not that long ago, and it's just not the case anymore. Now they are, like I said, harvesting data from our military members, which could really be used in a vulnerable way. They actually had to pull product off the shelves on the military base from GNC because it had chemicals that were prohibited for military members to consume, and they had been put into the products that were being sold on the shelves, and they had to take it down. Imagine if that were being used by a foreign adversary for a nefarious purpose, and how vulnerable we would be from that. So we've got to be really smart. We've got to be really diligent. We can't allow our information to be compromised. We can't allow our land to be compromised. We're not building more land. We're not building more farmland. So making sure that we protect it and keep it for Americans, for our food security, for our national security, and all those other things that you pointed out is really important. So thank you for the question. Next, I think we have Roberta. Is that right?
Yes. Yes.
Roberta?
Go ahead, ma'am.
Representative Mr. Barrett, first of all, congratulations on the passage of your first bill, and thank you for returning the Michigan citizens from horrific conditions and financial distress.
Thank you.
Sir, my question today has to do with the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. As you know, that was signed by Republican President Bush in 2007, and that loan program permits students who have worked for 10 years for a public service organization, and they have made payments on their loans to have the balance forgiven. Much like you said, our veterans have earned benefits. These individuals have also earned the right to that program. My concern is that the regulations that the Department of Education has started to develop look to me like they are going to attempt to retroactively take that benefit away from students, or they're not students anymore, but your constituents. Sir, can you assure me that you will do everything in your power to make sure that that benefit is not taken away from those that have earned it?
Right. So thank you for the question. I'm going to have to look up the specifics of the pending changes before I can give you a more, sincere answer. So we'll make sure if you leave your information for us, we'll make sure that we follow up with you accordingly. I am somewhat familiar with the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program. Now, when you say taken away, are you talking about people that, isn't it like a 10-year program before your loan is forgiven? Is that correct? I'm not sure if Roberta's still on the line. I believe it operates like a 10-year window where you work in a public service position, whether that's a teacher, a firefighter, a police officer, a variety of other public service professions, and it's a benefit that is provided to them that way. Certainly, if people are into that program and they're 6 or 8 or 9 years into it, we want to make sure that people who are in the midst of that program and have modified their decision making about a career field are not seeing that taken away midstream. Nor do we want to see it retroactively taken away from people whose loan was forgiven, because of course they've now made financial decisions based upon that reality. If we look at afford to continue certain things, that somebody I'm not suggesting that it is, but there's some instances somebody wasn't to a way that we haven't anticipated, and I think we need to be mindful of that. But certainly, those that are in the program already who are working toward the vesting in the program to have it paid off, I think we need to make sure that we protect that. And to be mindful and thoughtful of how we apply it. So make sure that they're fair for everyone. That's what I'm going to work on.
Congressman, I believe your audio is breaking up just a bit. So I'll take a minute just to remind everyone. Yes, just take a quick minute to remind everyone that if you'd like to ask a question, please press *3. And if you'd like to sign up for the Congressman's newsletter, please press *6 on your telephone keypad right now. Let's go back to the phones right now and go to Deborah. Deborah in Brighton, you are on with the Congressman. What's on your mind?
Hello, Congressman. This is Deborah in Brighton, Michigan.
Hi.
Hi. You had addressed the tariffs a little bit, but one of the things that I'm reading in the paper, and that's, the Wall Street Journal today, was just, hey, the immediate, the place that's really going to be hit the hardest by use of the tariffs is Michigan. And, it's kind of a little bit opposed to what you just said, in that the way that the tariffs are going to be applied, it's going to cause, our costs here for cars and for actually building the cars to go up. And we're already hearing about layoffs in some of the auto industries. So, wondering, what could be done to mitigate that, and if there's, anything you can address there.
Yeah, I believe I read, I'm somewhat familiar with the article. I read at least a portion of that earlier. Here's what I'll say is, no one can easily predict the future in the economy. That's the whole reason why we have markets, and they are not 100% known ahead of time. But that being said, the reality is we got to the point that we're in because of people pushing for really this unilateral disarming of trade, to where the United States was not in an advantaged position. And then markets adjusted, outsourcing occurred. We had a hollowing out of our manufacturing base in the United States, and countless jobs were lost along the way. And now that has taken effect, and foreign countries have ramped up their production, it's going to take some time for those markets to adjust to onshore more of those things. Now, in the specific case of Stellantis, I know that they had already been on the edge of announcing layoffs already. I don't think it was entirely dependent on this tariff decision. I think there were layoffs that were in the works before that happened. They've had some, candidly, they've had some struggles at their brand. So I don't think the two are necessarily one causing the other in its entirety. I'll also say that if you listen to the economic experts who've been in charge of, all of this trade policy for the last 30 or 40 years, they're the ones that kind of got us into this problem. They're the ones that led to a lot of the issues that we're facing right now. And until we return our manufacturing base to the United States, and that will take some time, and it will take some market adjustment to get us there, there are going to be issues of access to materials, parts, product, and raw materials, steel, aluminum, and all these other things. So I know that there are economic forces taking place that are going to squeeze this balloon in many different ways. And I think we have to be very watchful and mindful of what's happening to make sure that we're not causing economic hardship that is more than a short to moderate term horizon. And we have to look at the long-term effect of all the policies that we're doing. So I share a lot of your concerns. I do think that we have to, I hope, share the vision of having a greater industrial base in our country. I'm someone that believes in fair trade as a principle, that, we ought to have free trade between countries, and those that can do things well do it best, and we trade back and forth and provide value and mutual benefit. Trade at the end of the day is something that provides mutual benefit to both parties, and that's done in an inequitable way. It is done at the advantage of Americans. And at the end of the day, I will say this: our biggest trade partners are ourselves. The United States consumer market is bigger than any other market in the entire country. We are our largest trade partners already, and we have to make sure that we are doing this in the most advantageous way possible. So there's a lot that goes into that. I am very much paying close attention to it, and I'm going to continue to be carefully watching along the way as well.
Next up on the phone is Teresa. Teresa, you're on live with Congressman Barrett. What's your question?
I had several questions, but my first question is the SAFE Act. I want to be guaranteed, Tom, that you're going to vote no on that act. And if you're going to vote yes, I want to know why.
Okay. Well, yes, I am going to vote yes on the SAVE Act. That really ensures that we don't have non-citizens voting in our elections. And, you may think that that's not a possibility to happen, but you probably don't have to look back any further than last November, when we had that announcement that a Chinese national who was a student at, I believe, the University of Michigan was found to have voted early in the election of 2024 during the early voting period. He registered and voted, I believe, on the same day at the same time, and then later returned when he realized he probably should not have voted. We would not have even known that he was a non-citizen and voted in the election if he didn't step forward and announce himself later and tell the local clerk that he actually went back and asked to get his ballot back, saying, hey, I think I voted by mistake. There was no check in the system to stop him from voting. And you can say, well, it was just one guy one time who really cares. Well, frankly, I care. That disenfranchises another voter who casts a legitimate ballot. But we've since found on the Secretary of State's own audit that at least 15 non-citizens voted in the 2024 election. And it begs the question to me, how many people illegally voting in our elections is too many? For me, one is too many. I don't know what it is for you, but for me, it's one. I don't think it is an improper step to make sure that people demonstrate their citizenship before they would be allowed to register to vote. There is nothing that would present a hardship to people to simply prove their citizenship in person before registering an individual to vote for a federal election. Additionally, states would be required to remove non-citizens from their existing voter rolls while giving them the necessary tools to do so. Some people would think that the SAVE Act would somehow prohibit women from voting or something like that. That's entirely absurd. It is entirely not true. For the small fraction of individuals who have not updated their documentation, if they've changed their name recently, the SAVE Act explicitly directs states to establish a process for them to register to vote, irrespective of those discrepancies. People get married, people get divorced, and they change their name every day of every single year. There is nothing that stops them from demonstrating their citizenship. Like other areas of the law, citizens will be able to use combinations of existing identifying documentation that they can bring to demonstrate their citizenship, whether that's their real ID, their birth certificate from one state or another, a passport, other documentation, or anything else that would be demonstrating their citizen. No one will be left unable to register to vote due to a name change. So I think it is, frankly, being used as a scare tactic against people. I would hope that all of us on this call would agree that we only want American citizens voting in our elections, and we only want each person to cast one ballot with one person who's a legal citizen and a legal voter of that jurisdiction, because anything else violates the integrity of our elections, and candidly, it discounts your vote or my vote from counting the as an effective tool. And before you think that 1 or 2 or 15 votes doesn't matter, I can tell you it does. When I was elected to the House of Representatives, the State House of Representatives, a decade ago, I won by 148 votes out of 35,000. There's a member of Congress today, Mariette Miller Meeks from Iowa. She won her election 2 or 4 years ago by 6 votes as a member of Congress. 6 votes. So 15 is more than double the 6 votes she won her district by. That can make or break an entire race for the United States Congress. And there have been multiple bills that have passed on the floor of Congress by one single vote this term alone. So 6 votes in one district can affect the outcome of that election, and that one vote in the House of Representatives or the United States Senate could affect the entire trajectory of legislation in this country. We have to make sure that people have confidence in their elections, and this is something that I think would bring about a strong opportunity to do that, and so I think it's the right thing to do. But thank you for your question. I do appreciate it.
Before we get to the next call, I'd just like to remind everyone that if you'd like to sign up for the Congressman's e-newsletter and stay connected, please press *6 on your telephone keypad right now. Our next caller is Janice from Lansing. Janice, you're on live. What's on your mind?
Thank you very much. Good evening, Representative. I have a couple of questions for you. First of all, you talked about your efforts to assist those with VA benefits and getting more quickly their benefits. And my question on that is, what are you doing for the individuals who have been fired or laid off or otherwise terminated in this federal purge? Many, many, many of them are in fact veterans. Many of them are disabled veterans. And I'm just wondering what you are doing for those people who are in an enormous bind now because they've lost their income.
Well, thank you, Janice, for the question, and I appreciate you joining us on the call tonight. I'm not sure if you were on the call for my remarks at the very beginning of the call, but I pointed out that we had recently hosted the VA Secretary, Doug Collins, in my district, and we visited 2 of the VA hospitals that are where most of my constituents would go, either Battle Creek for people kind of on the western part of my district or Ann Arbor for those on the eastern side of my district. There were many people who were concerned about potential cuts to VA staff, and that's part of why I urged the Secretary to review his agency's process to guarantee that only those who have underperformed and not met the expectations of their assignment are relieved of duty, or those where we need to maybe phase out their position because it's no longer necessary, applicable because of a change in process or how we change our procedures, for example. There are, obviously situations in every type of organization where you can change a process and it maybe means that somebody's job is no longer directly applicable to what that requires. Additionally, I urged him that any individuals who were released despite meeting all of their performance-related expectations should be reinstated or considered for reinstatement on a merit basis. Now, I will tell you, for too long, the VA bureaucracy has resulted in unacceptable wait times at the VA, inadequate delivery of care, and a system that has failed veterans and leaves them feeling abandoned. We have still stubbornly high veteran suicide rate. We still have chronic issues with veterans not getting access to care that they've earned. Did you know that the VA is the largest federal bureaucracy? It's nearly 500,000 people, and it is larger rather than the entire standing United States Army. I'll say that again. The Department of Veteran Affairs is larger, has more employees than the entire United States Army. So to make the VA more efficient and more accountable and ultimately a world-class agency our veterans deserve, it demands that we have a lot of oversight and accountability. And I think veterans understand accountability better than just about any other group of people that I know of. We have to be accountable in our jobs in the military. We expect the VA to be accountable for the mission that they have. One of the examples that the Secretary brought up is that when he came into the position, he asked his chief of staff to give him a rundown of all the positions in the VA and how many total employees were there. And he said they would go to the payroll system to run a query of how many employees they had. and it came back with about 220 or 250,000 people. But there are 480,000 people at the VA. The reason for that is that they have agencies within the VA who simply refuse to participate in the payroll system to run a query of how many employees they had, and it came back with about 220 or 250,000 people. But there are 480,000 people at the VA. The reason for that is that they have agencies within the VA who simply refuse to participate in the payroll system that the rest of the department uses. And one of the things the Secretary pointed out is he said, I'm not doing these one-off exception things any longer. We are an agency that has to get accountable to the mission that they have. The VA, at the end of the day, is not an employment agency. They're a service agency. They're a service agency for the veterans that served and earned the benefits they are entitled to receive. And the VA's mission is to deliver those benefits to veterans in a fair, timely, efficient, meaningful, and dignified manner. And that's something that the Secretary was committed to in his discussions here, in district back home in Michigan. And that's something that I intend to hold him accountable for. I think that that's something that every veteran expects, is that their benefits are going to be delivered in a timely, efficient, fair, and dignified manner. That's a expectation that I have, and I'm going to continue working in that regard. If there are opportunities for streamlining operations and we no longer need quite as many people in certain positions at the VA, then I expect that we're going to reinvest those savings back into the department to make sure that we're delivering care to veterans in an even better fashion. I can tell you I've had examples of frustration of my own in dealing with the VA. And I'm a member of Congress, and I've had frustrations with the VA. I can only imagine what that's like for people who don't have the level of access that I do as a member of Congress. And it's my job to make sure that you don't need to be a member of Congress to be able to access your benefits in a really fair and efficient manner. So these are things we got to continue to work through. When I mentioned before, when I got elected to the State House of Representatives, it was in 2015, I walked in the door in Lansing as the only Iraq War veteran in the entire Michigan House of Representatives. And I worked closely with our federal partners, our federal members of Congress and Senate, to get benefits for the veterans that had earned them. They were reaching out to my office for help. We would get them assistance through their federal representatives. And I always told them, I said, it should not require a member of Congress to get you access and through the bureaucracy of the VA to get you the benefits you've earned. And I committed that if I ever were in a position to change that, I would do that. That's a big part of why I introduced the Clear Communications for Veterans Claims Act that was just passed on the floor of the House of Representatives today. And again, it's my position that we ought to treat everyone with dignity and respect. We ought to appreciate and respect those that are going above and beyond in their efforts at the VA, and there are countless employees who are doing that. For those that need some accountability, we ought to do that in a fair way as well. So that's my position on it. I think veterans agree that that accountability is important and fairness is also important.
Our next caller is Larry in Howell. Larry, you're on live with Congressman Barrett. What's your question?
Yes, sir. Thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. With all the current improvement and the current works going on in the government, how can Congress really help to bring clarity and reduce all the fear mongering and misinformation, right? To make sure Americans get real activity, real improvements, and real risk.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Larry. I hope I understand your question. It's about making sure that we get people accurate information and tone down some of the scorched earth rhetoric that's going on and some of the high stakes back and forth that takes place in politics today. I can tell you that I've witnessed that maybe a little more close to the flame than some. I've been through a multitude of very, very challenging political campaigns, both in the state legislature and now in Congress. And I think my district last year, the political campaign was close to or in excess of $40 million in combined spending, and it wasn't good. And there's a lot of negative in politics, and increasingly our culture is becoming more polarized, or more divided. We're in far different, tug-of-war positions with one another. We seem to not share common goals or common values any longer. I'm not convinced that all hope is lost, and I think that at the end of the day, good policy makes good politics. And I hope that if people trust the job that their member of Congress is doing and that they have at least they respect the thought process that goes into their decision-making on bills. They may not agree with them, but hopefully they at least respect them. That's the best thing that I can hope for as a member of Congress. I know not everybody's going to agree with every decision I make. And I like to think that I make the best decision I can with the information I have at the time that I make it. And access to information can be difficult. And I would tell you, I guess my best advice is to not believe everything you read on social media. That is largely unreliable. A lot of even your mainstream traditional media today, I frankly have found that to be particularly lazy. A lot in our local media, people putting out stories that are inaccurate. I had somebody misidentify the state that I represented in a news article recently. They misidentified the terms of the release of the couple in Mexico in a news article. We couldn't even get them to take down the headline that misidentified that. I mean, those are things that are a problem. I don't have a great answer for how we correct those, but I would say don't believe the first thing you read on social media. And when the incentive structure for public officials, members of Congress, people in the public eye is all about getting famous and getting your 15 minutes of YouTube fame and less about governing and making tough decisions and making tough trade-offs in the best interest of your district and in your community and in your state and in your country, then we have lost what we come here to do. And I didn't come to Congress to get famous. I came to Congress to achieve the outcome that I think is important for my district and for our country. That's what I'm committed to doing. I try and elevate the debate. It's not that I don't have disagreements with political adversaries on things that I care deeply about and on which we disagree in large measure, but I try and do it in a respectful and candid way, and I try and do it without being certainly over the top or inappropriate with the rhetoric or debate tactics that I use. So I can only be responsible for myself. I've learned a few lessons in life. One is that at the end of the day, I can only control myself. I can influence others, but I can only control myself. And it's an obligation to all of us to be a lot more discerning in the information that we gather and look at, and not just knee-jerk follow the first thing your cousin posts on Facebook today about something they saw online.
Let's take our next caller, Michael from Eaton Rapids. You are live with the Congressman. What's on your mind?
Thank you very much for taking my call. My question involves the current budget framework that's being discussed and the extensive tax cuts that are going on. The United States is currently struggling with high national debt, and it just seems like we keep on adding to the debt versus addressing it. And I'm concerned that these extensive tax cuts are only going to contribute to our debt versus move us in the right direction.
Mm-hmm. Well, thank you, Michael, for the call from Eaton Rapids, the Greyhounds, right? So thank you for being on the call today. And I just got an update from my team. We've had over 5,000 people join us. I think we have 5,300 people on the line right now. So I want to just tell you a quick thank you to all of you who joined us tonight. And thank you, Michael, for the question. And, you're absolutely right. Our deficits have blown up in the last few decades as we fought foreign wars that have lasted decades, plural. We've committed American troops to foreign conflicts. We've, expanded benefits to people, whether that's through Medicaid expansion, whether that's through other programs. As a result, we certainly had a aging population and people that have, taken advantage of the benefits that they've earned through programs that were set up decades ago, all of which have combined to stack up our deficit and overall grown our debt. At the end of the day, we have to be prepared to make tough decisions to streamline our government agencies and hopefully save us money and deliver better government assistance to people who need it most by protecting programs that really are critical. I think we can all agree that there are certain programs that are really critical for the beneficiaries that have, need to have access to them. And then there are things that people have taken advantage of that we ought to be watchful against. Every dollar that comes into the federal treasury is a dollar that is not donated to the federal government. It's money that's taken away from you, that takes away your own productivity, your own hopes, dreams, ambitions, future, and opportunities that you could have with your own family, but instead it's going to the federal government to be spent on whatever priorities your federal government determines to be in the best interest of our country. We can all point to examples of times where that's fallen short. part of my job in Congress is making sure that we rein that in and stop wasteful spending and have a scrutinizing look at a lot of different federal programs. For example, making sure that we have citizenship requirements for people that are earning benefits, social welfare benefits in our country. I don't think we ought to be paying out benefits to people that are in our country illegally. I think that's a fair thing to ask and something that shouldn't be met with a lot of resistance and would achieve a significant amount of cost savings, for example. In addition, I mentioned some of this upgrade in modernization of electronic health records that's going on. We waste a tremendous amount of money in the federal government and in the healthcare industry in general, redoing and duplicating expensive testing and screening and MRIs and CAT scans and cancer screenings and everything else for people who use Medicare or Medicaid or private health insurance for part of their care and Medicare for part of it, the VA for part of it. Each side isn't talking to the other. There's no interoperability between medical records, and your doctor doesn't know what another doctor prescribed. The healthcare side of a lot of our federal budget is humongous. Whether it's Medicaid or Medicare or the VA, add up to a huge amount of a line item in our federal budget. And we could save ourselves a substantial amount of money without removing any benefit from anyone or changing any eligibility whatsoever, just by cutting down on the duplicative nature of a lot of the testing that we do, because a lot of people's practitioner can't see what the other one is doing. So these are things that we can do that seem to be low-hanging fruit. I mean, they're going to take a lot of effort to really dig into and get better at. There, I think we have to look at eligibility. Those who should be eligible and should be achieving or receiving rather benefits like Medicaid and food assistance and other things are certainly here in the country legally and with legal authorization. We should look at work requirements for those that are on Medicaid. We shouldn't look at Medicaid as a permanent solution for people who are receiving health care. We should look at it as a temporary ability for people who are going through a phase of life where they need that assistance. But we should never look at it as a permanent solution for people who are especially working age and work eligible and everything else. And I think if we make the right steps to make it accountable and also have an economy that allows people to earn a living and support their family, then we can really cut down on a lot of the need for these programs and the enrollment in these programs, because people will naturally be going out and earning and supporting themselves and providing the economy at the same time. At the end of the day, though, these tax cuts that are set to expire would have a absolutely devastating effect on family budgets if they were allowed to expire. The child tax credit, for example, would be cut in half. The small business tax would be doubled. The average American a year more in taxes. And our small businesses would be paying double plus the tax rate that our largest corporations are paying. So we have to make sure that we have a fair tax process for that too. I'm pretty confident we can walk and chew gum at the same time. We're not going to pay off the national debt tomorrow, but I think we need to put ourselves on a glide slope to doing that. And that's going to start with making really discerning and sometimes difficult decisions and have a serious conversation about what that looks like to get us there. I'm committed to it. I look at the obligation I have and the legacy I have to leave behind for my own children. Right now, I think we're well over $100,000 in national debt through our compounded deficits and debt that we owe every man, woman, and child in the United States. And that's something, obviously, that's unsustainable. One upcoming thing that is a little bit behind the headlines, if you will, is the refinancing of a tremendous amount of our national debt that was done on a short-term interest basis by the Biden administration. Those are coming due, trillions of dollars, plural, and the amount of money as the bond market yield has increased, the amount of money to refinance our national debt is going to be substantial. And right now we're seeing a softening in the bond market that could actually lead to a discount on some of that refinancing and could actually make the national debt slightly less, imploding on us. But it's still something we need to take careful attention to for sure. And I appreciate your thoughtfulness and attention to the issue.
Let's go right to our next caller. James, Barrett. You are live, James.
Shane, are you backing up a combine?
Oh, sorry. Here, just 1 minute here. Let me get you off. Hey, I'm sorry. No, we're spreading manure out in the fields right now. No, I had a quick question for the farmers. I was curious, what should we look for
as far as the tariffs, and what should we expect in the future for the crop prices?
Yeah. Thank you, Shane. And I understand you're from Charlotte, so we're probably neighbors. I know you're out there working hard, and appreciate you feeding America and the work that you and the rest of our farmers do. I've made it a big priority to meet with farmers across Michigan. I've hosted the Michigan Farm Bureau in my office in Lansing twice. I visited the Farm Bureau of Shiawassee County on a district visit, probably about a week and a half ago. Really learning about a lot of the challenges that Michigan farmers are facing. I know the last time we went through tariff issues, it had a pronounced impact on farmers and crop prices, especially in soybeans that are exported and other things like that. These are things we got to be very mindful of. So I'm not tone deaf to the issues that our farmers are facing. And I think a lot of these commodity markets can be very, they can move substantially even in a short period of time. So we've got to be very, very mindful and very careful about how that is going. And I'm hoping as we have challenges in some markets that other markets will up for us that could provide opportunity. I know that the president said he's meeting with the Secretary General of Vietnam, I think this week, about trade and tariffs. And I don't know how much of our products get exported there, but if it's not any right now, perhaps that could open up a new market for us. And I think we have to look at an all the above strategy about emerging markets that we can sell our commodities into. And at the end of the day, I know, like you do, that people are going to continue eating and they're going to continue to source agricultural products where we need to get them. We have a great breadbasket of abundance of crop and livestock and other commodities. Michigan is the second most diverse state for agriculture in the entire country for the types of crops that we grow in our state. And that's something to be very proud of. I'm certainly proud of it. I want to do everything I can to make sure that we have stability in our markets. I know these tariff and trade negotiations can get very, very tricky as it relates to our agricultural products. And certainly as you have thoughts about the impact that that's going to have, we'd be more than happy to work with you around how we can make sure that the effect of that is blunted as much as possible on the end, the end of the line on that with our farmers who are actually putting those inputs into the equation. The other thing I will say is we want to bring down the cost of farming in general, whether that's through handing off family assets through the tax code, whether it is lowering the cost of energy for diesel and other fuel and other things that are going into your farm equipment. The inputs in fertilizer, for example, we're set to open a brand new potash facility in Michigan. We'll be the first new one in, probably decades. We'll be opening in Michigan, and it has some of the most pure potash in the world, I'm told. It's a very promising development because there are only a few potash mines that are left in the world, and some of those are in conflict zones in Russia and Ukraine. Others are in hard-to-reach areas or don't produce as high quality of a product. And the one in Michigan, I'm told, is going to be a very high-quality potash facility and can provide a great benefit to our farmers and hopefully bring down the high input cost that has really plagued our farmers over the last several years. So it's an all-of-the-above strategy. Certainly tariffs are a piece of that. The energy costs, the input costs, the regulations, the environmental codes, the waters of the U.S. regulations, the everything and all of the above stuff that we're trying to do to make sure that we can continue to have strong family farms is something that I fully support and want to work closely with you on to make sure that we get done right. And I'm going to continue to be working with Michigan Farm Bureau to make sure we get that done.
Next up is Elizabeth.
Oh, we also, last thing, we got to get a farm bill passed, and I know that's a big priority for our farmers as well. We're working on, I think, a 2017 farm bill that's got a one-year extension on it. We got to make sure that we get a farm bill passed this year.
Thank you, Congressman. Elizabeth, you're up next, calling from Lansing. Elizabeth, what's your question? Elizabeth, are you there? Elizabeth? We'll move on to our next caller. Oh. Up right now is Sherry. Sherry, you are on live.
Hello.
Sherry.
Yes.
What's your question?
My question is, with the recent leak of sensitive information, I know that you were in the military and you know what OPSEC and InfoSec is. So what is your stance on this? Are you going to take a hard line and hold Texas responsible for this leak?
Sherry, thank you. Your phone broke up some during your question. By the way, this will have to be our last question because our time's running short. You were asking, I believe, about the Signal chat leak of information that happened about sensitive information about the strike in Yemen. Believe me, this is something that is deeply troubling, something that we need to be very discerning about. As you mentioned, I served in the military. I'm very disciplined about operational security and flow of information and a need-to-know information basis. I want to make sure that we have a thorough investigation as to what happened, and any accountability that is appropriate and necessary is done. I'm not in this for political gamesmanship. I was disappointed that a lot of the people jumping on to pile on and everything else were noticeably silent when we had 13 of our Marines killed in Afghanistan during Joe Biden's collapsing withdrawal just a few short years ago. So I want to make sure that we have an appropriate investigation, appropriate accountability that is void of politics, and those that are responsible for this are held accountable to make sure that it never happens again. We also don't have a current system in place that exists for us to have share of information in a confidential manner or sensitive information when people are not at a SCIF facility or sitting at their desk in a authorized Department of Defense portal. We got to figure that out too, because we got to have a way for people to share information on a need-to-know basis when they're not going to be at a physical DoD authorized portal desk. So that's a lesson learned that we have to take. But I want to make sure that we have a thorough investigation for this and that it is done in the appropriate way that is void of politics. So I want to thank everybody who joined us. I am up against the clock because I think we're going to be cut off here very soon. But thank you to everyone who joined us on the call. I think we had more than 5,000 people participating. It means a lot to me that all of you were willing to join us tonight. I hope many of you got your question asked. If you didn't get your question asked, I believe that we will have a way for people to stay on the line and ask their question. You can also go to my website, barrett.house.gov, or give us a call at my district office if you didn't get your question answered, and hopefully we can provide you with a follow-up. Thank you again for joining us. Look forward to doing this again soon.
Thank you, Congressman. And if you would like to subscribe to the e-newsletter and have not had the opportunity to talk with a staff member yet, just stay on the line, leave your name and your email address after the tone. Thank you all, and have a great night.
The Access Live event has ended.
Thank you for participating in tonight's call. If you'd like to sign up for our newsletter and haven't spoken to a member of my team yet, please